Here is a chart that shows how the type and antitype concept is a very biblical principle. And what this chart shows us is how the ceremonial feasts all pointed forward to something Jesus would do for us. For example, Passover pointed forward to Calvary. Unleavened bread was Christ in the grave. The Feast of Weeks was Pentecost, when the Spirit was poured out in full force in Acts chapter 2. The Feast of Trumpets pointed forward to the Second Advent movement of the 1830s and 40s, letting them know, hey, judgment is coming. In fact, that's what trumpets in the Bible symbolize, is coming judgment. What comes next after that is the Day of Atonement. Now, when the Bible talks about the Day of Atonement in these end times, Israel's temple has long since been destroyed. So this cannot point forward to any temple on earth. The only feast that has not been fulfilled yet is the Feast of Tabernacles, pointing forward to the second advent of Jesus. It doesn't matter that Jesus isn't a Levite. Hebrews calls him a priest after the order of Melchizedek. The point is, he's our high priest. All of this still applies to him. There's nothing in the scriptures that says that they don't. There's everything in the scriptures that says that they do. Now, I have this chart on my website that illustrates that the Day of Atonement is in fact biblical. In Daniel 8:14, the Bible says that unto 2,300 days then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Now, I'm going to summarize this because I have other videos on this topic. Go watch them. This prophecy began in the fall of 457 BC. Point forward 483 years, that's when Jesus was baptized. 3.5 years later, that's when he was crucified. 3.5 years later, that's when Stephen was stoned. From here to here is the 7-year prophecy of Daniel 9. The 7-year prophecy does not apply to the end of time, by the way. But we still have 1,810 years to go, and because there was no year zero, instead of going to 1843 as originally thought, they go to 1844. What happens in 1844? The Bible says the sanctuary shall be cleansed. And again, there's no temple on earth to be cleansed. Daniel 9 prophesied the destruction of the temple and gives us a very strong indication it would never be rebuilt. And the Bible lets us know that when Jesus ascended back to heaven after Calvary, he went to the holy place of the heavenly sanctuary. Why? To intercede for us, to minister for us by his own blood. Why? Because the blood of bulls and goats is not possible to use to purify sin, to purify temple. That's why the ancient Day of Atonement was only a figure, only a compacted prophecy of what Jesus would one day do for us in heaven. Now, you look elsewhere in Hebrews chapter 9, and the Bible says that all these feasts and all that stuff, all the ceremonial law, was a figure for the time then present, and they were until the times of Reformation. Hence why we can say each of these feasts has a fulfillment in Jesus. And you can look at this chart and study it to see exactly what Jesus did for us and is doing for us. And you can see how the life, death, resurrection, and how the heavenly ministry of Jesus follows the sanctuary pattern, culminating in the investigative judgment. You know, what's really interesting about this is the Bible gives us a very strong indication that around the time of the French Revolution, the investigative judgment would begin. Notice I'm not saying at the time, I'm saying around the time. That's right, friends. Revelation 11 prophesies the French Revolution. And at the beginning of the context of this chapter that prophesies that, it says, measure the temple of God. Now, you can study the writings of Peter, and he defines what the temple of God is. That's the church. That's believers. It's not an end-time concrete building. And the word for measure here is very interesting. It does mean to measure. And figuratively, it means to estimate. It also means metaphorically to judge according to any rule or standard. Because what we also see in Revelation 11 is a 1260-year prophecy, which ran from 538 to 1798. And sure enough, 46 years after the 1260 years culminated in 1798, the investigative judgment began October 22nd, 1844. My friend, the truth does not need you to believe it in order to remain true. The truth does not seek validation from people on the internet in order for it to feel that it's still true. The truth is just true. It doesn't matter whether people agree with it or not. You cannot change truth. One of the biggest reasons people fight against this is love of sin. Because, my friend, the investigative judgment calls us to victory over sin. It teaches us that we cannot remain in sin and still call ourselves Christian. Friend, whether you like it or not, this is the truth. And I pray you accept it. I pray that you see the reality of this, the truth of this. Because the truth is, Jesus is coming soon. And Daniel 12 verse 1 lets us know that when he exits the most holy place, when he's done, probation is closed for all humanity, for all eternity.